A friend once told me that his father went to the butchery one day and his eyes caught hold of the woman behind the counter. And when her eyes locked eyes with his, he paused for a moment. He paid for his order. He left. And he never ever ever went back to that butchery again. And one day, many years later, he told his son, he said, "You know, the reason I never ever went back to that butchery was because I knew if I were to see that woman again, I would cheat on your mother." Now, this is an interesting story, and this story reflects a great deal the caliber of that man, because he was being authentic. He was being authentic with himself and truthful with himself, and knowing from himself what he was really doing, or what he could really do, or what he is actually capable of, and opting not to go there. And he could tell all that from one glance when his eyes locked eyes with that woman. And we all know that that is something that does, in very rare instances, happen. There is that one moment where your eyes might lock eyes with a woman that you don't know from anywhere, and the familiarity you see in her eyes and she sees in your eyes, and the warmth you feel towards each other, is inexplicable. Now, the fact is, you can acknowledge that that's how you feel, that's what you feel, that's what you see. And you can decide what you are going to do with that or not do with that. But you can only do that when you know what took place within yourself, when you are present with yourself, and when you are honest and authentic about what is going on with yourself. Now, there are many people, many of us, in fact, who for some reason or the other feel the need to be dishonest with others. Okay. And we find that in many situations, frankly, we have to be dishonest with certain people because not everyone is your friend. And if your enemy will use information to undermine you, then you have to obviously give them false information. Okay, this is perfectly fine. There's a place for dishonesty. But there is one place in which dishonesty is absolutely counterintuitive, and that is if dishonesty is going to lead you to be an unauthentic person, if you are dishonest with yourself. Another story I was once told by a woman was regarding her good friend who became ill and was hospitalized. And she confided in me and said, "You know, I have this dark, dark thought that I feel really embarrassed about. And I feel like a horrible person. But part of me wishes that she dies." I mean, that's a terrible thing to say. Now, it gets better. It gets better. And she says the reason for that is because then I could have a husband and mother her children and have the life she has now. Now that sounds like, okay, because, some people express things in confidence, and because this is very public and I have hundreds of friends, so I can say this out loud since no one would ever know to whom this relates. But it is indeed a very dark thought. But what's more is that it is a dark thought that has been acknowledged, and that's what's important, okay? People can have dark thoughts, but if they acknowledge it, they can act in a way that they choose to regarding those impulses. However, if they don't acknowledge it, okay, and these are dangerous people who are not able to acknowledge their own processes that they are internally going through. Okay, if she didn't acknowledge that to herself, she could have been, even while her best friend is around, actively pursuing her best friend's husband behind her back. But since she knows that she secretly covets her best friend's husband, she is on her guard and limits her interaction with her best friend's husband and only interacts with her best friend. And she does that deliberately, knowing that within her there is a certain vulnerability and weakness and inclination towards acting in a way that might undermine her best friend's marriage. So since she knows this about herself, she is able to take the necessary steps to avoid an action which would be considered highly immoral. And since she considers it highly immoral, she's able to act accordingly. When people are dangerous is when they refuse to acknowledge their deep-seated, immoral, and counterintuitive desires, and then lie to themselves and say, oh, it's nothing. And I'll give you an example of this, okay? You get a woman, this is also a case I know of, who starts talking to another guy, though she be married. So a married woman starts talking to another guy, and she tells herself, oh, it's okay, he's only a friend. And then the conversations escalate, and she starts talking to him every day. And then it escalates, and she starts going with him for coffee. And then it escalates, and she starts going out with him every day. And still she's telling herself he's only a friend. Okay? Even after the fact that she now sees him every day, she's now emotionally involved with him, and he and her have intimate feelings towards each other, she's still telling herself that this person is just a friend, because she doesn't want to stop herself from seeing him, because seeing him makes her feel so good. And so she's able to perpetrate high levels of immorality because she's not able to acknowledge within herself what is happening to herself, and she lacks the ability to be honest with herself. And so her husband ended up divorcing her. That's what happened in the end. The point is, we don't need to lie to ourselves about things that we deep down consider morally incorrect. Okay? We don't need to lie to ourselves because the voice of conscience is going to prove to us how bad we are. Because when we are dealing with ourselves, we should not be concerned about right and wrong regarding our feelings. There is no right and wrong when you feel. Okay? If, as a married woman, you walk out into the street and you find a man and you are drawn to him and he's just so attractive and charismatic and handsome and really he gets your blood boiling and you would really just like to, you know, have your way with him. But you're a married man, okay? A married woman. The thing is this, up to that point you've done nothing wrong. Okay, there is no right and wrong way to feel. Okay, if those feelings have overtaken you, up to that point you have done nothing wrong. Maybe there's an indication, maybe you can contemplate whether there are problems within your marriage based on those feelings, if you acknowledge them firstly, because you first have to acknowledge them. Perhaps it is your married relationship suffers intimacy, perhaps. Perhaps it is that you are sexually frustrated because of that. Whatever the case may be, all things come from first being authentic with yourself and acknowledging how you feel without regard for whether it is wrong or right. There's no wrong way to feel. If you feel that way, that's how you feel. The question is, what are you going to do about it? That's where the morality comes in. That's where your voice of conscience comes in. That's where you say, because I feel this way about this particular man that I've just met, I am not going to give him my number. I'm not going to see him. I'm not going to have a friendship with him, and I'm going to stay away from him altogether. Because the integrity of my marriage is more important to me. And for that reason, I'm going to forego these initial surge of impulses that I now have. And having those impulses itself is not wrong. Okay? We don't understand why people are drawn to each other and attracted to each other in society, in life. We don't understand really the full spectrum of how all these things come together that make up this equation of attraction. And so therefore we cannot blame people for simply being attracted to each other. We can blame people for what they choose to do regarding it. Because now that's where your morality comes in. That's where your mind comes in. That's where your conscience should shout, be screaming loud, you are married. Simple. Okay? And basically, those are scenarios I gave you where the first step to making good decisions in your life is to be authentic with yourself. Okay? There's no need to tell yourself you are good if you are bad. And there's no need to tell yourself that you are bad if you are good. Because bad and good doesn't matter. Okay? When you are dealing with yourself, all that matters is what is authentic. And when you know that, you choose how you want to act on it. Thank you very much.